Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Bob Moran.
Thank you so much. It's great to see so many people here to celebrate the art of cartoons. I say art. For a cartoonist, you're not really an artist, you're not really a journalist, you're something in between. And that's a liberating place to be. At its heart, it's cheekiness with a pinch of brutality. You're going to see plenty of both tonight. Welcome to my studio. My studio at home is never this tidy. When I look out the window there, I see sheep. People always want to know how I come up with my ideas. I find it easy to draw, but hard to explain. Sometimes I have something I want to say, but it takes days or weeks to work out how to do it visually. All this is really a question of consciousness. What is it? Where does it come from? Are all our thoughts and imaginings the byproduct of an animal brain tossing electrical impulses back and forth? Or are we sacred beings channeling ideas from a higher source? Sometimes I doodle absent-mindedly and something emerges. Sometimes I think of an image or I dream one, and I don't know what it's for. Then something will happen, a news story will appear, and the image fits. Often I get sent suggestions from people who think they've come up with a great idea for an original cartoon. They can be so confident that they include a proposed royalty plan and provide me with their bank account details. Requests do inspire a certain something. I've learned the long way that the right response to mad suggestions is always no. What I discovered early on about drawing that I loved and felt like a magic trick was you could say things to people or about people that wouldn't hurt them, and you otherwise wouldn't get away with. Like my dad. He could be grumpy. I was 7 when I drew this. It's flattering when you take the time to create art. It's a paradox, really. A cartoon is funny, it's as if you don't mean it, which allows you to say things you do mean. It's an exaggeration. People can recognize themselves in it, but choose how much of themselves they want to recognize. It's a statement that that person matters to you in some way. Your pictures might be framed and stay up on the wall forever. Cartooning people and situations began with family holidays in France. I'd make comic strips of all the embarrassing disasters. Dad not being able to speak French, Tom not being able to eat cheese, and Patrick not being able to stop shitting in the Channel Tunnel. I loved comic strips. I couldn't stop drawing them. At primary school, I drew Sports Day. I drew the running race, everyone setting off, then everyone crossing the line, and then Crystal, the school bully, coming in last. A big, sweaty mess as a snail overtook her. Factually accurate, apart from the snail, an early artistic flourish. Someone passed that cartoon to Miss Hackett, who told me to stay behind after class. She said, "You've been given an amazing talent for drawing, Robert, and you must never, ever use it to make fun of other people." I thought, that's exactly what I need to use it for. I used to impress girls with my cartoons. I'd make their boyfriends look as stupid and ridiculous as possible. When I was really successful, they'd show their boyfriends, and I'd get a smack in the mouth. I did take requests back then because I needed friends, and I got into trouble for drawing more and more outrageous pictures. I drew my art teacher, Mr. Denham, a lot. He never minded. In fact, he recommended I went and see Gerald Scarfe give a lecture. That was the first time I realized you could draw funny pictures for a job. By the time I finished school, the teachers I hadn't targeted asked me to draw them before I left. My drawings made me establishment. I knew I had to be a political cartoonist. I wanted to be able to draw whatever I liked without restriction. And I yearned for a bigger audience that would get my jokes. Of course, you have to be interested in politics. I never was, but I didn't let that hold me back. I wanted the chance to draw something different every day and see it published. I couldn't think of anything more exciting than that. I still can't. And there's no other job where that's possible. And of course, politicians in the free world understand the trade-off. Part of the deal of wielding power is you can be criticised, you can be lampooned, and you're not allowed to exile the jester. You either ignore it completely, or you buy the cartoons to hang in your downstairs toilet. You never complain. Can you tell what it is yet? First politician I ever drew was actually Tony Blair. He's back, demented eyes. There was David Cameron, hairless body. Drew him like a basted turkey every time he holidayed in Cornwall. Theresa May, great legs. She loved her shoes, and so did I. She wore these snazzy signature leopard print heels to show authority. I focused on those shoes until they were instantly recognizable. By the end, I didn't need her in the picture. And then she was out of it. While the politicians slither in and out of range, your style develops consistently. My signature was having my characters break the fourth wall to interact directly with the audience. Here it's the turkey. Here it's the snail. My favourite way to do this is with animals. But back to the beginning, before those heady heights. All of the newspaper cartoonists used to go to the pub, get pissed, and judge the Young Cartoonist of the Year awards. I decided to enter. My university tutor said, make an impact, do something hard-hitting. There'll be stiff competition. I didn't win. But I did get a personal email from Martin Rowson telling me they'd never laughed so much at an entry before. He said it was so outrageous they didn't think the sponsor would approve, so no first prize, or any prize as it happened. I didn't mind. I did actually, I'd never won anything. But the next time I went to a cartoon exhibition, and I went to every cartoon exhibition to proffer my portfolio to anyone who'd look at it, all the cartoonists stopped me to congratulate my snap erection. 4 short years later, I was making a big impression in the office desk space industry. Despite being published in The Guardian and The Morning Star, I was in desks when Martin Rowson called me with big news. The Telegraph's main cartoonist, Nick Garland, had been fired. Imagine that. He'd been at the paper for 40 years. His well-known catchphrase was, "I like my mornings." He'd rock up in the afternoon, file a cartoon, then leave. He also liked his evenings. Anyway, Garland was fired, Christian Adams was promoted, and they were looking for a new second cartoonist. Martin said he'd put in a word for me, and he was confident the Telegraph would be in touch. They weren't. I emailed the comment editor. I know I've worked for The Guardian and The Morning Star, but I'm not a communist. I was in the middle of this huge office space filling out a spreadsheet when my phone rang. My manager was explaining desks as I quietly put down my clipboard and left the building. I started at the Telegraph a week later. Martin always joked that he got me my career. He probably did. I was so green when I started. I was 25. They used to really push me. I was not permitted to keep my mornings. I had to submit 6 or 7 ideas a day. Figured out the technical stuff as I went. What paper to use, what paints, what inks, how to be faster. Most of my roughs were rejected. But eventually something would be approved. And I'd make more changes. It was wonderful. I was learning all the things I'd always wanted to learn but couldn't learn anywhere else. I still remember filing my first cartoon for the Telegraph. I strolled casually over to my no-nonsense Scottish editor Chris as it appeared on his screen. It's great. What the fuck's that down there in the corner? That's my signature. It's terrible. You're signing a cartoon, not writing a fucking check. Change it. Change what? Change your fucking name. From now on, you're either Bob or Moran. Pick one. Okay. He made a good point. It's about efficiency. You can't cram your pictures with details and gags because readers only spend a few seconds looking at a political cartoon. They certainly don't have time to read 2 names. It takes a couple of years to really understand the news cycle. Most of the time, the news repeats itself. PMQs, budget, state opening of Parliament, Grand National, Wimbledon, Eurovision, Strictly Come Dancing, party conferences. Every year follows the same pattern. To an extent, every week follows the same pattern. It's locked in. People like the familiarity of this. It gives their lives a rhythm. Part of our role is to keep that cycle fun. It's useful for a cartoonist. You can plan ahead, but it can be annoying. Grand National, politician falls off horse. Wimbledon, politician gets tangled in net. But when something unexpected happens, there's a real buzz in the newsroom, everyone rushing around on their phones. It was thrilling, a chance to prove myself and be part of the enormous machine of news, politics, and global affairs. My work was popular with readers who thought I was their age, and soon enough I was the only second cartoonist. I had to work in the office, which was tricky because our daughter Poppy was disabled and often seriously ill. Ideally, I'd have worked from home, but this was no time to complain. The industry was in crisis. People weren't reading the papers. In fact, there was even a meeting to let me know that the budget for syndicated photographs had been capped. I didn't get the point. The point, it turned out, was that our cartoons were now worth the same amount as a stock photo. This did not include Matt, who'd conquered our industry by refusing to colour in. But it did include me. My pay was halved. I told them I wouldn't be able to afford my mortgage, my daughter's physiotherapy, or my train fare. They said, don't whinge about money. In the end, I did what I had always done. I changed my clothes. I bought brown brogues, difficult to find in a size 12. I like those shoes. Cream chinos, a gingham shirt from T.M. Lewin, and a blazer from Topman. Crazy time to be spending, really. I strolled into the office, proud to look smart. I was dressed down immediately. You're a fucking cartoonist, not working in the bank. It was a long day. I was gifted a fully paid cruise to take my family around the Med. All I had to do was knock out an illustrated article about holidaying with a disabled child. I might have bragged a lot about our all-inclusive VIP trip. The food was terrible, our tiny berth was situated right next to the disabled cabin we needed, and no one helped us on or off the ship. On the last night, I booked us into a hotel on land, and we ate dinner looking out to sea as our cruise ship of doom crossed our sightline. Happily, I knew I could make this really funny, and my editor loved the idea. I drew ferociously for a week. Then my editor approached me in the canteen. The paper had won a bigger contract with another cruise company, and they needed a different spin on everything. I won the Foreign Press Award for that piece, and the Cruise Ship Award, and the cruise ship company offered us another cruise. Finally, I was an award winner. I understood the industry now. I'd learned how to play the game. Financially, though, it was untenable. I sat up drinking whiskey I couldn't afford and emailed the CEO resigning. The next day, they offered me a full staff contract. Bloody hell. Through a mixture of endurance, Lefroy, and irony, I suddenly had everything I wanted. I was allowed to work from home. We moved back to Somerset. My new editor was young, gentle, only interested in what was going on with my pigs. I was treated with respect, and not just at work, by friends, family, and my pigs. People thought my life was exciting. They'd seek me out for the inside take on what was going on in the world. I had creative freedom, financial security. I was in the countryside. There were awards. I've mentioned loads of awards. I could still put on black tie, drink champagne, and go to grout shows. I didn't need to impress anyone anymore. Life was sweet. I thought this was the only cartoon I'd ever draw about that. Viruses from China, another part of our friend the news cycle. They come round every 7 to 10 years, stay in the news cycle for a few weeks, and then we forget about them. Nobody had a chance to forget this one. Now, my family are all very close. We generally agree on everything. In those early weeks, it all seemed like hyperbole and headline fodder. In March, we were at a 70th birthday party for my father-in-law in a local pub. Everyone was talking about the virus, but the prevailing attitude was, it seems like a lot of rubbish. Already at that time, people were being urged to avoid large gatherings, but there we all were with a bunch of 70-year-olds crammed into a small village pub. I had a conversation with 4 of my in-laws who were all doctors. They wanted to know what I knew on the political side. It happens all the time in newspapers. We know what's coming, but there are reasons not to share it with readers, various reasons. Anyway, I didn't know much at that stage. It's swine flu or bird flu, China trying to scare everybody. It's not going to work. I wanted to know what they knew on the medical side. Again, not much at that stage. Italy doesn't make sense, they told me. There's an appeal for more ventilators, but we know ventilation's a death sentence. Auntie Joan sneezed. Uncle John said, "Watch out, I'm vulnerable." We all laughed. We carried on agreeing. Maybe the doctors were wrong, maybe the media were wrong. Either way, this was a mistake and would be corrected imminently. The idea of the vulnerable took hold very early on before any measures or lockdowns were announced. I remained sceptical and unbothered. Then my brother came to see us. He was acting strangely. He wouldn't hug my children. He was worried about our daughter Poppy. She's got cerebral palsy. They'd put her on the vulnerable list. Now I was worried. I always listen to my brother. He's smarter than me, and he's taller. I panicked. We took the children out of school before schools closed. We stopped going to the shops before shops closed. We hunkered down. I remember feeling unusual then, like other people would think we were wildly over the top. Ours was a wait-and-see mentality. Felt like the virus was on its way, waiting at sea on a cruise ship of doom, leaving us just enough time to pack. Once it docked, we'd find out what we were dealing with, but in the meantime, we should prepare for a violent, bloodthirsty tourist. My parents thought it was complete bollocks. My in-laws agreed we should be careful because of Poppy, but they kept showing up with food and toilet paper to pass through our window. We told them not to disturb our vital isolation. I guess from this point, we were waiting for the man to tell us what to do and when. I had to go into town to pick up Poppy's epilepsy meds. There was a lot of discussion about this. What time to venture out, what to wear, where to park. I took gloves and a mask from the shed I'd needed to get rid of a load of asbestos. I drove into town. It was empty, disturbing. Parked right outside Boots. Handy. I put on my gloves. I brought out my mask. Force 8 twin cartridge half mask with typhoon valves for low breathing resistance, 4-point suspension harness and P3RD filters. And I sat there, staring at it. I don't know exactly why, but I couldn't put it on. Might have been pure vanity. That's the closest I ever came to wearing one. I thought about how frightened I'd become, but of what exactly? I drove home through our empty village looking out for dead bodies. A mobile morgue, a police car on fire, something, anything. Maybe my bloodthirsty tourist was stuck in customs. We were all waiting. I needed to think. I wanted to know how careful we should be. Was it safe for Poppy to play in the garden, for example? She's vulnerable to all sorts of things. How vulnerable would she be to this? After some digging, I found a disabled charity website that listed the categorization for at-risk groups. Under cerebral palsy, it said, although not at any directly increased risk themselves, people with cerebral palsy may have their care disrupted if their carers become ill with the virus. What? So, not at all. She's not at more risk than anyone else. I knew there were thousands of parents just like us convinced their child was in mortal danger, when in fact nothing had changed. Who else mistakenly thought they were in danger? Was anyone at more risk than they were a year ago? Was Granny? I began to suspect not. Once I was no longer worried about Poppy, I could enjoy the general nonsense and get back to toilet paper. Then on my birthday, I had terrible news. They shut the pubs. We were told to summon the Blitz spirit, but I couldn't muster the stoicism. Time dragged on, and we agreed to create a new lifestyle. We abdicated all responsibility to wallow in our heroism. This was sarcastic, but too many people liked the notion of a blitz spirit to get the joke. It didn't matter. I was happy to be an outlier. I knew what I thought. I didn't need to wait for the man. I could be a man. Whether you were afraid or not, this was no way to behave. And I could say so. I had a platform. I was in the press. My big advantage was that ordinarily I had to apply every skill I knew to a different story every day. Now there was only one story. Martin had always told me to go for the obvious gag. These gags were pretty obvious. It's not important what you think. It's about showing the contradictions. Remainers who'd spent years howling about freedom of movement were furious if anyone left their house. Brexiteers, euphoric about the financial advantages of being outside the EU, wanted to shut down the entire economy. The Labour Party didn't want people to work. The Tories didn't want people to shoot grouse. We were told to follow the science, as if it didn't matter where it led us. The health service had to be protected from the danger of treating patients. The illness was so deadly and unprecedented that people wouldn't have any symptoms. The average age of death was above life expectancy, but there were millions of lives to be saved. The emergency was real, but required ad campaigns for people to act like they'd got it. Your vaccine would protect you, but only if someone else took it. The discrepancies were so obvious. I kept checking for overlap with my colleagues at other papers. Before all this, we'd often go to the pub and ask, "What did you draw today?" "Oh, I drew Jeremy Corbyn as naked, pregnant Beyoncé." "Catastrophe, shit, so did I." Then you compare them, horrifyingly similar. Now we couldn't go to the pub, but I was still checking the papers every day, looking at their work. There was no overlap. I kept checking. Any day now they'd all be producing horrifyingly similar stuff. But they didn't. I started to get desperate for someone to make the same joke as me. I stopped checking. It was too late for them to tell the joke. It was too late for me to stop telling it. I called my brother to find out what I'd missed, to find out what I'd got wrong. We spoke for hours and hours a night for months and months. The decision had been made to trade lives, which is ethically disgusting for sure, and we were supposed to stop living while our lives were traded. Maybe it does matter what you think. The fact that lockdown was likely to cost hundreds of thousands of lives popped up on the front page of the Telegraph. It was officially time for readers to get it. No one seemed to. My brother was confident summer promised an escape. The state would have an easy way of stopping everything without anyone being embarrassed. He was right. Everyone was released in the summer. Then the state introduced masks. People actually put them on. It was fascinating. I went to the pub with friends, the friends that were still in touch. They wore masks between sips of their pints, and they thought there was something wrong with me. I made the papers. This is my friend Martin Rowson in The Guardian. This might look small, but it's a big deal. Not the caricature, that's how I draw me. But he put me on the same level of the layer cake as Toby Young, who he told me for years he really hated. A bore? I'm certainly not a bore. I'm a spontaneous guy. But I didn't blow it out of proportion. I spontaneously took myself to a cafe where they'd ran out of cups and saucers. There was no one at the counter, so I waited patiently at my table. Window table, bonus. When the proprietor appeared, I stood up. She shouted at me, "Have you got a mask?" I said, "No." She said, "If you haven't got a mask, you can't stand up." I said, "I want to order a coffee." She said, "You can't come and order a coffee." I said, "Will you come and take my order?" She said, I can't leave the counter. I was so desperate for a coffee, I racked my brain for a logical solution. And she said, well, what are you doing that for? And I said, I really want a coffee. When I got to the counter, she said, well, you can stand up now. I paid for my coffee. She handed it to me. Thank you, madam. And I said, am I allowed to walk back with it now? And she said, no. There are a number of tricks and techniques you can use to make a cartoon work as it's supposed to. Slapstick is obviously a classic. This is the well-known gag of somebody falling down a manhole. This man hasn't noticed the hole because he's too distracted reading government guidance on how to stay safe. That's the joke and the comment. My wife inspired this cartoon. She'd gone safety mad again because I'd bought myself a chainsaw and was learning how to use it. To work, you need the book to stand out in yellow and the writing to be clear so your eye is drawn to it. You also have to get the pose just right. There's no doubt here that this man is about to fall to his doom. I'll often put in extra details that add to the joke, but it's crucial these don't distract from the key elements. Here, his shoelace is undone. At this point, I was only submitting one idea a day that I loved, often first thing in the morning, before I'd spoken to anybody. The editors would love it too. Yes, they'd say, perfect. And I could start straight away. Easiest days of my life. Never felt more relaxed. Here's an example of basic imagery for context. A beer tap and a pint are enough. It's a simple but ingenious play on words that not everyone gets immediately. You could rely on the Telegraph readers to have basic German, but they sometimes struggled with the English ones. This is in every way a word-based cartoon. It still requires an image to make sense, and that image needs to be composed in a way that frames the words effectively. Speech bubbles are useful because they allow you to put words in anyone's mouth. They're also a pain in the arse because they interfere with composition and have to be very easy to read. Everything has to be read visually in the right order. Here you're probably going to read the speech bubble first, can't you read? Then see the boy who's turned up for school, then see the sign on the school gate saying school closed. Then you might, if you need to, go back to the speech bubble and realise that the reason the boy can't read is, honestly, it doesn't matter. Matt, the cartoonist Matt, really liked this everyman character I created. I hadn't realised how much I kept coming back to Clive, how much he preoccupied me. We've seen him a few times already. There's Clive. There he is again. There's a bit of me in Clive. Sometimes he got things right. No, he got things wrong. And then sometimes he got things right. Sometimes he's doing his best. He's in his gingham shirt, cream chinos and brown brogues. Solid ensemble, nothing wrong with that. I'd never needed an everyman character before because the target was always politicians. Here the target is still politicians because they created Clive. Even people who never became Clive certainly knew a lot of Clives. This is Clive's twin brother, Joe. Got Sunak's face just right here. He's got this loose mouth that's too big for his face, and he holds it open in a half smile that makes him look gormless, especially with those massive sticking out ears. There are some things people don't notice immediately, like how small Rishi Sunak is. I mean, he is tiny. I did him too big. Sometimes Clive didn't know what was going on. Sometimes he had an important choice to make. That's Boris Johnson behind the bush. And it's not obvious enough, although it still works, because it doesn't matter who's holding the rope. It doesn't matter who they are. It matters what Clive does. Clive went on holiday. Clive got lost in the desert. Sometimes he despaired. By the time I did this one, the man pissing is Clive. It's bottom-up tyranny. The everyman has become his own oppressor. But I'm skipping ahead. To amuse myself, I'd submit ideas I didn't think would be accepted. When Lucy called from the comment desk, she was laughing about this one, but said they wouldn't be able to run it. As she said that, the top editor walked past her desk and laughed. She said, "Can we do this?" And he said, "Sure, why not?" Easiest days I've ever had. Outside the office, my Twitter following grew, thanks to Peter Hitchens and his Bob Moran Gets It hashtag. Everyone at the Telegraph admired and respected Peter Hitchens, and he was a Sunday Mail columnist promoting a Telegraph cartoonist. The Mail are notorious for trying to poach Telegraph journalists. They tried to poach me once. Peter Hitchens never promoted anyone's stuff, even Sunday Mail colleagues. It was a coup. And I knew he was on exactly the same page that I was with all of it. He would be prepared to take it as far as I would. I didn't know how far that would be, but I was confident he would. I was sure they'd reject this one. But it was my best idea, and now I was putting all my sketches on Twitter anyway. These ideas felt worth the effort. Sometimes I'd post them with the comment, "I wasn't allowed to draw this," and my second audience would tag the Telegraph as cowards. I really enjoyed that. Maybe I did push my luck. Anyway, I got away with this hilariously because it was the Strictly Come Dancing final that weekend. I didn't know that, but my editor thought I was being clever combining two stories. And I suppose I was, although the stories I was combining were cross-party complicity and the death of freedom, facts, and dignity. It was my responsibility to highlight the children here, but I knew they'd asked me to take it out, and it's the gravestone that really matters to me, so I didn't bring it up. Boris Johnson's arm is too long, but sometimes mistakes make it funnier, so you leave them in. A week later, this was rejected. Now, this probably should have been rejected because the gag isn't that great, but it was actually rejected because it was deemed too harsh on the Prime Minister. I thought, hang on a second. A week ago, I drew him in a dress dancing with Keir Starmer over the graves of children. There had been a meeting between the editors and Boris Johnson at Number 10 promising more advertising money if the papers got on board with another lockdown. But I didn't hear about that until later. We were expecting our third child. I only had 4 weeks to go till my paternity leave. I kept talking to my brother every night. Nothing had stopped. In winter, hysteria peaked, another lockdown was incoming. Christmas was cancelled. People thought seeing their relatives was a death sentence. The paper rejected this because they said it was too emotional. So I put it on Twitter, where everyone's too emotional. A few people were even angry. They thought I was talking about the size of the risk and that this one was too big. We were supposed to be afraid of a very specific chain of events, that we would feel well, but in fact be ill or asymptomatic, that we would then infect somebody else and that that person would then die. I decided to calculate this precise risk, the foundation stone of the government's Kill Granny campaign. But it didn't matter what publicly available data I used. The risk was always vanishingly small. Chances of an asymptomatic person killing Granny at Christmas, or anyone they didn't like at any time of year, were around 1 in 3 million. You're better off clonking around the back of the head. In fact, the most reliable data suggested the risk could be even smaller. As low as 1 in 30 million. You are 3 times more likely to be struck by lightning in the UK. bad luck. I told my editor this was news. He said, "No, it isn't." I posted my findings on Twitter. I'm no fool. I obviously ran them past a few boffins first. And my answers generated more arguments than my cartoon. I didn't mind people quibbling about my answers. What bothered me was they still weren't interested in asking the questions. I also realized then it didn't matter what the risk was or if there was one at all. People wanted to believe they'd given things up for something. They didn't want to be told they hadn't. They'd given up cash, but then cash had been demonized for years, and rightly, I mean, God, the new banknotes aren't even vegan. Avoiding cash to defeat a virus was obviously ludicrous, but suddenly it was gone. I never drew a cartoon about the importance of cash because cash is boring, a bit like risk calculations. And we were living in a period of drama. Chinese cabin crew were wearing nappies on flights because now even toilets seemed dull and old-fashioned. I could see that everyone's emotions were still fully functional. Emotion was the way to get through to them. I probably should have drawn an EasyJet flight attendant filling their nappy at the sight of cash. But instead, I went with this. I drew it on my day off and posted it on Twitter. I wanted people to be angry. I wanted to remind them of how we're supposed to live. Courage, dignity, love. I'm very lucky that all my family, my wife, my brothers, their wives, my parents, all saw things exactly as I did. An old friend sent me messages saying I'd lost my mind and was embarrassing myself. That was weird for me. All these interventions were seriously harming my child. Poppy hadn't seen a consultant in over a year. I thought my friends might understand. But who needs old friends when your new best friend is Peter Hitchens? Paper rejected this because they said it was telling people to break the rules. I could still get a lot in. This was accepted. I did argue quite hard for this to show what the rules we were agreeing to would look like in practice. Every day, the pressure grew to come out with a bold, pro-vaccine cartoon. I couldn't do it. I didn't see the vaccines as a way out. I saw every measure as digging us deeper and deeper into a hole. My editor said, "Sure, we might not need the vaccine, but you've got to look at it as psychological. It will stop people being afraid." Oh, I see. Act like you've got it. Mask like you've got it. Inject because you still haven't got it and you're never going to get it. The paper made it clear they would never say anything against the vaccines. I made it clear I wasn't going to promote them. We compromised. Everyone knew the rollout was slow. I was glad it was slow, but I drew this. I didn't post this one on Twitter. I told myself it was fine to do this and keep my platform. 3 out of 4 are exactly what I want to say, so that's fine. And sometimes it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you just think, fuck it. And sometimes you think you've only got 2 weeks until your paternity leave. And sometimes you're on your paternity leave, thinking. We had our baby, Roberta. I was very happy, even though I was no longer sure about the ways of the world she was born into. What could I do to change things? 10 years ago, our first daughter, Poppy, was cut out of my wife's body in less than 3 minutes. She wasn't breathing. She was resuscitated, made one tiny noise as I held her hand, and disappeared into intensive care. I hated myself. The brain injury she suffered left her with cerebral palsy and epilepsy. I'd known something was wrong, but I didn't want to be seen as difficult. I didn't want to seem like a troublemaker. I should have torn the roof off that place. I didn't even stand up and speak out. My reticence almost killed my child, and she will suffer her whole life because of my cowardice. Watching this tiny, fragile creature battle against impossible odds was truly humbling. All she knew was struggle and pain, but she didn't give up. even though she had every reason to. Every force was against her. I told her that I understood how hard it would be for her to stay with us, but I promised her that if she did, I'd never let her down like that again. I promised her she'd be loved, and I'd buy her a pony. I need to buy her a pony. Something else happened, though, that complicated things. I hated myself. I hated everything about myself. I hated my art. Here was my baby facing the biggest battle imaginable, and I couldn't help her because I'd spent my life learning how to draw silly pictures of stupid people. What good was that now, when it really mattered? A dark and terrible force had come to claim my daughter, and I was armed with nothing but a 2B pencil. All I offered the world was frivolous distractions, fleeting smirks destined to be yesterday's news. I carried on because I can't do anything else, but I couldn't believe what I did had meaning after that. Now, Poppy was 8. I had 3 children. She was suffering again. She hadn't seen a consultant in over a year. Her mobility was declining. She was having seizures. She didn't understand why she couldn't go to school. She couldn't understand people speaking to her in masks. I hadn't stopped anything. It was May 2021 and we were still locked up. A young mother in our town was paralysed after the Pfizer jab. My godmother Judith died 10 days after the AstraZeneca jab, and these injections were going to be given to children. I was lost in the horror. Then people started writing to me. They told me I made them feel they weren't alone. They said I'd kept them sane. They told me their stories. A man said I saved his marriage. Others had found the courage to be with their parents as they died. A woman planned to kill herself until she saw my couple on the hill. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I wasn't empty-handed this time. This strange niche thing that I could do might be exactly what people needed. It might be what my children needed. It might be what all these children needed, because these malevolent forces are coming for them. That 2B pencil suddenly felt like a weapon, and it was time to use it. Their monsters were big and ugly.
Yes, I hear what you say about somebody exercising their freedom not to have a vaccine, and they're perfectly healthy. I don't want them sitting next to me in the theatre.
Well, it's a good job you're not here tonight, Edwina.
You probably don't see it like this. There's 2 different classes of people. If you're vaccinated or if you're unvaccinated, you have all these rights. If you are vaccinated...
That is what it is. So, yep.
I don't even think that we should allow people on the streets unless they've had the vaccine.
You don't have a choice.
As long as not everybody is vaccinated, nobody will be safe.
So
Get the fucking vaccine! You need to get vaccinated, and if you don't, you are going to die.
Frankly, we can't trust the unvaccinated.
They should not be part of polite society.
The lunatics who won't take COVID vaccines walking around lawfully unvaccinated? That's psychotic.
Angela, we either allow this or we end up holding people down and jabbing them by force.
if you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
You have no right not to be vaccinated.
Who's not going to take the vaccine because they think it might be dangerous? Raise your hands. Now take that hand and slap yourself in the fucking face.
They are all idiots. Right, well, in that case, if you refuse to be vaccinated, you shouldn't get the same rights as people who've been vaccinated.
When I created Stand Firm, I felt desperate. It was a very instinctive and rapid process. That picture was shared across North America and it kept going. It was the most widely shared artwork in the world at that point. I chose to paint it in blue and white. No one ever picked up on this link and I never explained it. If I'd stuck an NHS logo on the demon, it wouldn't have worked. These things function on a subliminal level. It's a secret language. I was on a roll. Back at the Telegraph, my paternity leave substitute, the cartoonist Andy Davey, was also busy. Here's some examples of his work. Oh, nice NHS logo there. Shilling the shit out of that speech bubble. My editor actually pitched this idea to me a few times before I went on leave, but I don't take requests. We have different styles. I prefer mine. Then Peter Hitchens wrote an article stating he'd had to give in to the vaccine. He said it was an inevitable decision for all of us, reluctant or not. He said we've lost, and he left the field. Bob Moran gets it. Oh, no, I didn't. My paternity leave was coming to an end. Because of my profile, I knew people at work might have noticed what I was doing. A rebellion against the paper. Now I was posting all my images on Twitter. When I went back, no one mentioned them. I didn't mention them either. This was rejected. Yeah. But I could still get things through the Overton window. I got Build Back Better into the Telegraph. This felt like a coup. I could still make the mainstream work for me. This went in. This stayed out. My editor delivered the dreaded words, "I don't really get it." This is editorial code for, I know exactly what you're saying here, and I don't want you to say it to our readers. We disagreed about whether people had been brainwashed or whether their paranoia could be transferred willy-nilly. Sometimes when I didn't get my way, like with his climate change one, I let it go. At other times, in this case, for instance, I went straight to my second audience. The Telegraph went with this. It was awkward. It wasn't just my cartoon spilling onto Twitter. I had a spat with a doctor promoting these drugs to children. Breathtaking. And I was suspended. I was told to stay off social media until the hearing. For 3 weeks, I didn't have to worry about any of my audiences because I spent the whole time talking to lawyers. In the end, the audience decision was made for me. Ironically, after 10 short years, this was the last cartoon of mine the Telegraph published. Now I was free, I could talk about anything. Yeah. It's hard to know where to start. You could question it all. Terrorism, pornography, James Corden. How long is Michelle Obama's penis? It's a great feeling. I had no one to answer to. I twiddled my thumbs, tidied my desk, looked through old sketches. I had no one to ask. I called my brother. He said, no, it's too hard-hitting. It's too much. I put it back in the drawer. I got it out again. He was right, it was hard-hitting. Good, it wouldn't be too hard-hitting for my new audience. I wanted to make a statement to them. I'd made my decision. I finished it, published it on Twitter, and it did really well. The Democracy Fund offered me a zero editorial interference deal. I had to produce 3 cartoons a week and make them free to any publisher in the world. They're based in Canada, but I didn't have to focus on Canada. Thank God. What a boring country. Finally, we were seeing a big, powerful rebellion. This was going to change everything. We all love Canada. Terrific country. I don't always anticipate the news right. It didn't work out like that. In fact, it didn't even make the news. At least Trudeau didn't ignore the truckers. From his cabin in the woods, Justin Trudeau declared the truckers terrorists and enemies of democracy. If the truckers were threatening freedom and democracy, who was defending it? Ah, yes, that's right. It was such an interesting story. This was the first time my black-faced Trudeau ever appeared. There he is. He was fun to draw. Normally I'd spend days practicing a politician to develop my style and get a good likeness. Justin Trudeau's difficult because he's not a particularly interesting looking man, a waxed Fidel Castro. Few people didn't understand the blackface joke, so I reverted to this. Not satisfying. Satisfying. You should never explain a joke, but I decided to make an exception. Justin Trudeau, they, them, the wokest guy on earth, used to love partying in blackface. He probably still does. Not everyone is aware of this. When someone replied to one of my cartoons in confusion, I would respond with a different picture of Trudeau at a party. I do love sharing pictures of Justin Trudeau. Hypocritical wanker. This was more fun to do than Theresa May's kitten heels. I really painted the town black after that. There were a couple of problems. I spent my last few months at the Telegraph hoping someone would make the same joke as me. Now I had the opposite problem. My new audience loved memes. Yeah, you do. To create a cartoon, you come up with a gag and you throw as much skill as you possibly can at it to optimize that gag. To create a meme, you come up with a gag, and the less skill you throw at it, the better it works. A cartoon is funny because someone has spent hours cross-hatching at artwork with love, care, and finesse. All to make one joke. It's absurd when you think about it. The carelessness of memes makes them fast. I'd wake up to find an idea I'd had meme to shit, and I'd have to abandon my sketches or it would look like I'd copied the shit. What is a meme? My mother asked. Memes are digitally created jokes. There are good ones. Once they're on the internet, people change the words to make a different joke using the same setup. Part of the humour is in the recycling. I love them, and I hate them. I wasn't only drawing Justin Trudeau, I also spent some time with this chap. I'd lost patience with Clive at this point. Maybe there was still hope for him. There's no hope for this guy. These were cathartic. I was frustrated with everyone for not getting it. I was told to be less angry. And then, of course, there was the forgiveness problem. A lot of people ask me about forgiveness. I confess I'm not a saint. I don't know how you're supposed to forgive someone for something they don't know they should apologise for. Better minds than mine have made suggestions. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. For my part, all I can do is show you what they're doing.
Health Organization has declared a global public health emergency.
National emergency. An emergency.
Emergency of international concern.
Health crisis.
Today's emergency
is the biggest threat this country has faced.
People in China are taking no risks.
A catastrophic epidemic
of this invisible killer
will now be ramped up.
There's no alternative.
There aren't enough ventilators.
Surely perhaps those who don't have any sign of it and may never get it might be exposed now to getting it.
One of the huge problems we have in the UK is compliance has dropped.
First of all, you need a shock and awe campaign. Get people's attention. Then, when everyone is feeling potentially ill, nudge them to feeling potentially healthy.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day number 1 of my PE with Joe, where I'm going to be your PE teacher for the nation.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high.
Up we get. Oh. Right. Come on. A little bit quicker. Get your hands up. Get them up, come on. We're very, very thankful.
Jolly, really. Getting lost in a harmless adventure. All a game needs is rules. Nothing too complicated. It's a walk in the park. Oh, no, we've made those illegal too. Do not pass go, do not collect £200, go to jail. Shove this up your nose. Don't ask questions, in fact, don't speak at all. Look, everyone's doing it. Even the Sound of Truth himself loves to be gagged. Here he is, newsreader and family favourite, Hugh Edwards. This is a better shot of his face. The volume of this was extraordinary. It was everywhere. Every billboard, every bin truck, every bus stop. Every person who complied became a walking participant in this campaign. The trouble with artists for hire is they're following a brief. Designed by committee can fail. It did here, not just because of all the Photoshop. The only face they needed was the one they weren't allowed to use. I used their colour palette and shared their message. It is important to think who your behaviour affects. Act like you've got it. Don't grab a coffee. That could be dangerous. Grab a jab. That couldn't be. Go on, grab one. Grab one now. Grab your one, you know, yours. It's free. And when you grab your free jab, you can grab a free burger. Or if you prefer, you can grab some of this. All celebrities love a freebie. Keep on rocking in the free world. And travelling again now. Only one condition. Travelling, travelling, travelling.
This is a very, very practical way of putting our resources at the disposal of the NHS, and we help God's providence in getting the nation right.
A drop of holy water, communion at the same time.
This place was a great pilgrimage destination in the Middle Ages, so it was seen as a place of healing.
Vacunarse es un modo sencillo pero profundo de promover el bien común y de cuidarnos unos a otros, especialmente los más vulnerables.
To love one another, as Jesus said, get vaccinated, get boosted.
Beware false idols and false prophets. Sometimes it's hard to imagine why someone would want to sell us a crisis. At other times it's easy. I had something to say about this one, and I wasn't going for a cruise ship award this time. I already had one. I understand that it's easy to accept the official explanation of things because the official explanation of things is always completely and totally rational. Heart attacks, for example. More of those now, but don't worry, it's normal to die suddenly. I'm not being sarcastic because I don't want to die. We can all avoid gardening, sitting down, running about, clocks going forward, having a shower, having a shit, having a baby. Simple. Climate change. Now that is a worry. There was certainly a deluge of material. When the news cycle shifts from crisis to crisis, there's no time for repercussions. When we adapt to a pattern of catastrophe and all the ritual that pattern implies, there's no time for memory, even if there's always time for dancing. The news cycle draws a line under things and moves us along, absolving us as we gratefully abstain from thinking, and the new crisis succeeds to the throne. We don't heed the lessons of the past, we idly exploit them like any other trussed-up cliché, and we rejoice as our new high priests are crowned.
Leaders who have developed the anti-COVID vaccines
I honoured them in my own way. Here's Dame Jacinda. Her balls were an afterthought. I can add balls if I want, and no one can stop me. I was having a good time. On the downside, once every institution is captured, it's a total free-for-all, complete moral inversion. Anything goes.
You were super duper today, getting your COVID vaccine, Elmo.
There was a little pinch, but it was okay.
And it keeps on going. Approved for babies. Sorry, I mean children of 6 months old. I felt physically sick doing this. There's no optimism here. It's just me weeping in a drawing. I drew this because I needed to jolly myself up. It did well. People liked it. Maybe they needed jollying up too. So good, rehearsed that for hours. Then, tragically, the Queen died. But long live the King! The sausages are crucial to this. There's a lot of darkness and symbolism here, balanced by the sausages and the nipple tassels. Without the sausages, Jimmy Savile wouldn't land in the same way. Yeah. But I'm not as interested in the Charleses as I am in the Clives. I've been thinking about us a lot and where we go from here. This is my son Dylan's favourite. I don't think there are too many Clives on this planet. I don't see him as a vector. I don't see him as a guinea pig. I don't see him as a slave. He is a sacred creation. And for better or worse, he's here to live freely and make his own decisions. He does have a choice when confronted by mad suggestions. It might look impossible. It might feel impossible. Well, it's possible. I would suggest it's vital. I'm just a cartoonist. I'm a guy who draws Clives. He might recognize himself in my pictures. He can choose how much of himself he wants to recognize. Clive matters to me. I want him to understand that it's not for anyone else to take the joy from our laughter, the spirit from our songs, or the poetry from our writing. They sure as hell can't take the truth from my art. This is where I draw the line. This is where I've drawn thousands of lines to strengthen the only one that matters. I'm free. That means I'm free to stand firm. And so is Clive. This is the last cartoon. The big picture is never crafted by mistake. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. I want to say thank you to Nick Ashcroft, Steve Ellis on tech. Thank you to Owen on the drums. Matt on bass. Thank you for supporting me. I will see you at the bar. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.